red monitor too. All right, hang on a second.
It's a white monitor, yeah. It's on your website, on your PowerPress sites.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the new media show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Hey, Todd. It's great to be here. Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Well, we're it's just, what this week of all weeks, it has been. I feel like I burned a candle on both ends. It's busy. You
Yeah.
been busy?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's been a lot going on. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of, you know, recordings with other podcasters. I've been doing some interviews. I'm probably doing 3 to 4 or 5 interviews a week now. So
That's a
it's keeping
lot.
me busy. And then the 2 podcasts that I do every week. So it's definitely keeping me busy. And I keep hearing all sorts of interesting things. I've been on a few conference calls with a few big networks that are looking to add more shows or whatever, kind of move to the next level. And it's interesting what people are saying. And there's just a regular flow of new people into the space that are getting caught up in the vortex of some misinformation and things
Oh,
like that are going on out there.
the vortex of misinformation. So do share just a little bit. This sounds very intriguing.
Well, it just it's the East Coast bubble.
Oh,
All these events that are coming up. That bigger companies are going and attending and listening to some of those kind of events back there, and we don't have to single anything out particularly, but I just get this agenda that's starting to permeate across, especially bigger companies, um, about what podcasting is all about. And I get on these conference calls, and I just, there's many cringeworthy moments that happen during the conference call, and it's just like you have to make a decision. Do I say something contrary, or do I just, let them proceed? And it's kind of a tough. It kind of puts me, and I think many of the leading podcasters or podcast platform operations people that really kind of know what's going on, to see this kind of stuff happen. But
you
um,
know, and it really raises and I can't go into any details, but
yeah, of course, yeah,
it raises some exasperation that we've been having.
yeah,
I mean, real exasperation and the um wow, how can I say this?
yeah. It's hard. It's hard to even know where to begin because it's so fundamental.
And I hate to say it too, the science of some of the discussions absolutely doesn't support, and I mean like raw science doesn't back some of the conclusions that people are making, and I have real concerns.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the media and the press is starting to permeate across a lot of new people coming into the space. I think we've been kind of trying to counter a lot of these articles and a lot of these conferences or these events, these private events and things like that have been going on, that are putting out a certain kind of agenda, and it's starting to permeate a lot of new people as they come into the space. That they're approaching it from that perspective because they think that's what's true, and it oftentimes heads them off in the wrong direction, and it's hard to pull them back again because they perceive that the people that they've heard this from are authorities and really know what they're talking about and are basing it on real data, and it's oftentimes just not the case, and it's hard to really kind of change people's minds once it's been communicated like that and accepted like that, and it kind of makes us look like we're wrong,
Right.
and that's the hardest part about it, is overcoming that. And I think it's a trend that's happening across many areas, including politics and including a lot of things. There's just a lot. It's so information travels so openly and freely now, that it depends on where you read and who you listen to, and sometimes that reality distortion happens because people aren't open to a lot of sources of information these
And,
days.
and when you dare tell them they're wrong,
Yeah,
they flip the fuck out. They just like, what do you mean I'm wrong? You
yeah,
know,
or
this
yeah,
how can this
yeah.
information be wrong? I'm like, you're right.
Yeah, how can it be wrong? You're right. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, but it is,
In
crazily enough.
and then you have this, this challenge of, like you said, okay, do you let them continue blissfully going forward? And when you, in the back of your mind, you're screaming at the top of your lungs, stop,
Yeah,
you know? And, thank God the regular podcasters are, the day to day individual podcasters are, they're more informed by and large, with some exceptions, but by and large, they are more informed than the majority of corporate suits.
yeah. Yeah, because they're in the trenches doing it. They listen to other podcasters that are actually on the ground doing it. A lot of these people that we're talking about, or these companies, um, the people involved aren't doing podcasts. They're trying to build a business around it, and those kind of things. And they've never podcasted themselves. They've never actually done this. They've never really researched it. They've just gone to a couple of events and listened to some speakers, and all of a sudden they feel like they're experts.
And,
Um,
and there's
yeah,
really, and I don't even want to give them any credit. The newsletter that a certain individual puts out is just more often than not woefully incorrect
yeah.
in some topics, and
It taught it. It kind of gets to a point sometimes where I feel like I'm the crazy one. It's like, why am I running so contrary to so much of what's happening out there? And I think when I explain it, I think going on these podcasts that I've been doing these conversations, I feel compelled to kind of put out kind of the structure of how this stuff it works and what the history of it is. And part of what the issue is that there's no historical knowledge that puts things in context, right? To helps explain why you and I and Rob Walsh and all these folks that have been in this medium, and really kind of thousands of other podcasters, they get it. Why we say what we say is not based on we have an agenda. It's just based on our own real world experience and what we see with people and talking to podcasters that are doing this. It's not based on, I hear it from some speaker somewhere. It's based on my real world experience, and I try and communicate that. But even that, I feel like, I'm going to come across with an agenda, and it's just like that's not how I want to be perceived.
yeah, and I understand that. And when you're considered to be the rogue element, the guy that's out there that is, man, we talked to Rob or we talked to Todd, and holy crap, or they talk
Yeah.
to, the other Rob, and, I think he's pretty blunt with people too.
Oh yeah, Rob. Rob has gotten more blunt over the last couple of years than he ever has. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I just, it is very, very, very frustrating,
Yeah.
from, from that perspective. Now, I did get a report. I heard that the Scripps event in Cincinnati,
Yep.
was really good. I heard that the information put out. There was one of the team members from Midroll was there, and it was, from everything I heard, was pretty spot on,
Yeah.
dialed in. They had a pretty good clue what's going on in the space. So there's outliers. There
Yeah.
are companies out there that know what's going on.
Well,
Uh,
they've been actively producing podcasts for, you know, 10 years. So yeah, they're going to get it,
yeah, they understand.
Yep.
I know of another company that I trust, in the space, they basically just they said forget it. They've thrown in the towel. Said we're done. We're done arguing. Um, you know, you want to continue to live this fantasy that you're purporting, so be it. So so what it's really going to boil down to is there's going to be a lot of money spent in the space that is going to be like throwing just take $100 bills, burn them, and or a stack of hundreds and burn them up or flush them down the toilet because that's you know sadly they just don't have the right perspective. They're getting the wrong advice. They're being consulted to by people that have no business having the word consultant at the end of their name.
Yeah.
Um, in there's ongoing agendas by individuals and that want to try to dominate. Not just just gonna put it out there. There are suits that are trying to take this space over, and they're
Yeah.
doing it by, in some instances, a little intimidation.
That's been going on for probably what 3 or 4 years now, to some degree or another. I would agree with you. That's definitely happening. And by putting out some misinformation, it can potentially take the community in the wrong direction, and um,
You
and
know,
that's what can damage it.
and then they're pushing their narrative to be the because they've got contacts within the press space.
Yep.
And when you make comments, um like the Wild Wild West, and then come out a little bit, and then have their own, and then starting pushing agenda. It's there's yeah, the division is going to continue to grow. And all I can do at this point is talk to people that are willing to listen. And I'm talking to a lot of people that are listening, maybe not willingly, but I'm here to provide a service, and and we're going to get out of the way, I guess. Provide the tools and services, and same with you guys. Get out, provide the best we can, and they can they can believe what they must.
Yeah, I guess I mean we can keep doing what we're doing and keep sharing, um, based on our long history in this space, and I feel I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm going to be who I am. I'm not going to change, and I certainly don't want to beat anybody up,
Right.
um, publicly. I don't want to point fingers and say these people are wrong. I just want to
Just
be
point them my way.
positive
I
and
will. I'll do it.
yeah, well, and just be positive and just make sure that they understand that, this isn't coming from some business agenda that I have. This
No.
is coming from a life experience. I mean, I've been doing this stuff for 13 years and was doing it even before podcasting. So and I don't know all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but I listen and I observe and I follow, what other people are saying too. And I know who to trust and who to question. And, and I think that's a skill that everybody needs to develop.
I, you know,
Um,
and this is one of the reasons why on my team, everyone that we've hired that is touches customers, that interacts daily on sales calls, whatever it may be, they're doing a podcast. They are in the trenches having to do a show and seeing how it's growing and the challenges that go around with it. They're actually doing, not saying. And you're another example of that. We can probably count on one hand the number of people that are actually doing a podcast that work in podcasting companies. If you look at Rob Walsh, he's doing a couple of shows, maybe three, I think.
yeah.
You look at you're doing two or three. You look at me, I'm up to four. Um, and then so who else? Podbean doesn't do any podcasts. They don't have any people doing podcasts.
Yeah.
Podtrack doesn't have anybody doing podcasts. Who else? Who am I missing?
I think that's uh
Well, let's see. Does Buzzsprout have a show? Does those guys have a? There's a half
I don't think
dozen.
so.
There's a
Yeah.
half dozen companies that are out there that are doing podcasting, but you don't see any of the leadership at Podcast One doing any podcasts.
No, no.
Um, you know, you,
But but you do see the folks at Midroll doing
you
one.
do, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
So maybe yeah, of course, SoundCloud doesn't do any podcast. I don't even know if they have a living body over there that knows how to spell podcast. Um, so it's unless you're down in the trenches doing this and understanding that, wow, how come my numbers are so low? Or we
Yeah.
didn't get any response, we didn't get any audience response, or all those things that go into building a show. I think it's critical, and then the whole metrics thing, man, I just don't get me. I could fucking go off for an hour on the whole metrics thing.
Oh, it continues to be a perception out there that there's all sorts of problems
Oh,
with it.
drives me crazy.
Um, and it's overblown, and it's
Wait,
being overblown for an agenda reason, and it's like we can't, you know. It would be great if we had 100% adoption of a industry-wide standard, but that's not holding this industry
but
back.
the problem is that
Yeah,
you've got okay, so you have financial bottom lines that are
yeah,
impacted by a specification that if held to the ninth degree would cause revenue to drop. So whenever you're
yeah.
proposing things that potentially impacts bottom line revenue, no, they don't want to hear that. Oh no, 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 no way. Do you want to hear about? You want to talk about fraud? Potential of fraud? Oh, there's no fraud in podcasting. Oh yeah, really? Mm-hmm. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, believe
Uh,
what you will, right?
you
Yeah.
know. So all we can do, Rob, is we can just continue to stay the course, do this show, tell it the way it is, and then educate the best we can, and hopefully influence enough people with this podcast that they can go out and spread the formula. And as Adam Curry says, punch people in the mouth. Not literally,
Yeah.
but when you hear some bull, call it out. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
you know. Oh man.
Yeah, I agree.
I just, and I saw something, and I entitled today's show a little provocative. And it kind of goes along with this conversation. They hate Apple.
Yes, yes, yeah.
They hate Apple.
Because Apple has too much control.
They hate Apple. I mean,
Yeah,
it's so I
yeah,
keep hearing it. I keep
yeah,
hearing it again and again and again and again on calls. Well, why don't they? F them and MF them and what, and I'm like, you had better thank the stars in the podcasting space that Apple continues to support podcasting in the way they do.
yeah, totally.
You're talking crap about the
Be careful what
80%.
you wish for,
It's
right?
right. Okay,
Yeah,
Apple's. Oh, we'll take our podcast app down. We'll take podcasts out of iTunes. You don't have to worry about your stats numbers.
yeah,
And time to kill iTunes. I hate the podcast iOS app. Well, okay, you hate it, go build a better one. And then good luck.
yeah.
But it's just,
I know Rob Waltz has taken the tack now um, that all of our energy should be pointed at Google now,
oh,
not at
absolutely.
Apple,
Yeah.
not at Apple. You know.
What have I, Rob,
Yeah.
what have I been doing since for the last 2 or 3 years.
Oh, I know you have. I know you. I mean, no, I know, but he's really.
Okay,
I mean, he turned a corner here in the
well, good because he
last
was.
month.
Yeah, good. I'm glad he has. He's finally woke up. Okay, Rob Walsh. Oh, I lost.
Yes.
What happened? I lost your video.
Oh. All right.
Anyway,
Let me
I
see what's going
I
on
still
here.
have your audio. So, Rob Walsh, we gave a present to the community. We gave it away. Subscribe on Android. Implement that on your sites. 14
Okay.
apps. 14
Yeah.
apps support it.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
I think I'm gonna have to come out. I'm gonna have to disconnect and come back in again. I think.
That's fine. I'll wait for you.
Okay.
So while Rob is resetting here, um, let's be frank. Podcasters haven't helped the situation with Android either.
I'm back.
Okay. So podcasters have to do their part in making sure that they're promoting the Android platform. Countless times I go to a website and there's no way. There's just iTunes on the website, and they've completely ignored. It's a huge, huge percentage. So podcasters are in part of the problem.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And as new people come into the space, and I believe that that's what's kind of going on here. They There's so much media coverage that these new people come in, and that's what they gravitate towards is what's being talked about in the media. And I have to spend time when I talk to them to kind of recorrect their perceptions a little bit and clarify it a little bit. Unfortunately, I think to some degree, most you and me and Rob Walsh have enough credibility somewhat to overcome some of that stuff. But there's some that I talk to that I it just feels like they're so down the path that it's like if I start questioning too much, it's not gonna be perceived very positively. So, yeah.
It's I don't know. I don't know what we can do here. Um, to be
I don't
honest
know.
with you, it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
And it's in this past week it kind of came to a head a little bit for me too, and I just I'm just it just drive you to drinking. You want to start drinking tequila, and I know that we're talking in generalities, guys,
Yeah.
but we're also trying to protect the confidentiality of the customers that we're talking to. Most of you are individual podcasters, and you're doing the right thing. You're creating your shows, and if you're listening to this show, you're doing what you need to do to build a show and build an audience, and make your shows available to all pod. If you've listened to this 10 episodes of this thing, every one of you have the ability for someone to subscribe on your podcast to via an Android device, and you're supporting iTunes, and you're doing that because you're listening to this show. But those of you that are listening, and we know that there's about 5,000 of you that are, you need to help us in promulgating, and I can't speak today, this formula of getting the word out about additional ways to build your show, build your audience, and you were preaching to the choir, I think, mostly. There's a few of you that are listening, and I know that there's some big company guys that are listening to this. You guys need to come out of the closet. And I started to use that analogy, but you guys need to come out of the closet. And if you agree with us on some of these issues, you need to start being vocal.
Yeah.
And if you think we're wrong, if you think we're barking up the wrong tree, then we need to hear from you too. I want to hear your opinion and where we're wrong. And come on here and say, you guys are wrong because of this. And we'll talk. We have no problem exchanging ideas here.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, Rob, and I think you'll agree, we're not always 100% correct.
No, and I kind of, I guess the biggest part that I worry about really is I think we come across as a little bit of
Cynical?
no, well, cynical, and it's like, well, it's always been done this way. You guys can't, for some reason, you guys can't think about, well, if things were, different, right? How would the medium be? And I feel like I spent so many years kind of being a little bit almost like a futurist, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to predict the future.
Yep.
That I feel like in this space, I'm a little bit more practical because I think I'm a little bit more skeptical because of what I've seen, and it kind of puts me in a position where I don't feel as optimistic at times, I think, as other people feel, just because of that. And I think I don't like to be perceived as kind of like a curmudgeon, where it's like I'm always poo-pooing these great
Right,
ideas.
right, right.
And I think that's how it comes across. At least that's how I feel when I'm saying it in the face of those issues, because it's like, yeah, it'd be great if we solve this discovery problem that podcasting has. But the problem is that it's a fake issue. It's not a real issue. And
If
it's
the
it's
discovery
it
issue is they're not spending the money on their marketing to be discovered
yeah.
if they're a
Yeah.
big company.
Yeah, and that's just one example of what I'm talking about. It's I don't I would love it if it was as simple as that, right? Where you could just let's solve discovery problem, but when you really pin them down, you really can't come up with what the issue is. Um, and you look at the data, you look at what's going on, and it's just like, well, it's there may be an issue there. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know what it is, and I don't think anybody else does either.
Well,
If I look in the past and how it looks in the today, I just don't see something there that is holding podcasting back, or um, you know i I think that there's a new paradigm coming. I think like the Amazon Alexa and and the Echo may be part of that solution that may be better, but I wouldn't say what we have today is a problem. People
s-
can easily find content. It's just
so
that there's too much content,
well,
right?
that's exactly it. So, do you think? Okay, so think if you were. Let's just change our hats for a second. Talk about discovery, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this today, but
Yeah. Yeah.
let's. Okay, I'm on YouTube. Okay, is there a discovery problem on YouTube?
I don't know.
Okay, so
That's
if you
that's a
think
tough
about it from
question. That's a tough
YouTube,
question.
there's a heck of a lot more YouTubers than there is
Yeah.
podcasters.
I mean, I can go into YouTube and just type whatever keyword I want for
Or
whatever topic I'm looking for, and I'll find it.
you'll
So,
and it's the good, bad, and ugly. Okay.
yeah, exactly. I wouldn't say that that's a discovery problem. That's like we've always said, it's the content providers saying that they haven't been discovered yet.
In YouTube, YouTube does a great job of promoting the big guys. You get 100,000 plus subscribers, and you get a plaque from YouTube, and you start being you start being shown a lot higher, just like you are on iTunes. But iTunes isn't necessarily a indication of audience size, so that's a big difference with iTunes. But my little thing that I do. Okay, we're streaming right now on YouTube. Okay, if I really wanted, I say, oh, there's a discovery problem on YouTube. You know, because no one's finding my show on YouTube.
Yeah.
I could say that right now, but I don't build my brand on YouTube. I build my brand on my site, and I promote my site on social, and so I could say there's a discovery problem with YouTube too. So if we look at that, okay, is there a discovery problem on Facebook? Are people going to find my Facebook group or page? Yeah, there's a discovery problem on Facebook too. And so
Yeah.
everywhere you go, there's a discovery problem, and quite frankly, it's not the podcasting space's problem. The problem is I'm not promoting my group. I'm not promoting my YouTube page. I'm not creating content that's exciting enough to be discovered and get viral. Come on, let's be frank. So, there's not a discovery problem in podcasting.
No. No. It's a fake issue, and it's been put out there by those that are trying to solve the problem, right?
Keep on
And
solving. Spend lots of money on
that's
solving
right.
discovery, and we will continue to
Yeah,
create content and build audience otherwise. But I don't know. I
yeah,
just and it's the stats thing too. Look, here's the beautiful thing. I never get conversations about stats with media buyers. I talk to media buyers now. It's not even a discussion point. I talk to media buyers every week. Stats is not a discussion point. Stats are a discussion point with people that are creating podcasts, vendors, radio stations. They have
yeah,
high concerns about
yeah.
stats, but the media buyers, it's not even a
No,
discussion point anymore.
well, it's not the core of what they do. It's,
Well,
I mean, th-
they're those
they're
that
all
are
about building ROI for their campaigns.
yeah, and
A-
it,
And how do you do that? You target your content. You go after shows based on the content. You go after shows on relevancy to the target audience. That's what those guys are concerned about. Um, anyway,
and
yeah,
far as the numbers go, I've never had a vendor send me back a invoice saying we don't believe your numbers. Not once since we started this thing back in 2005. Not once have I got a vendor return the invoice.
yeah,
You know, um, we talk about performance of the campaign. We talk
yeah,
about
sure,
if a show is not delivered the type of numbers we expected them to and what might be wrong, and we'll analyze that. But we won't
yeah,
talk about the numbers. So this
yeah,
whole, the stats, the main thing I've always worried about, and this is, you know, down in the weeds, but I've always said I don't care what the numbers are as long as I know what the numbers are, and then we'll go from there. But when you start talking about different logarithms and people processing different ways, they're a lot of these companies are looking to squeak. And part of it's because guess what? Management's saying this podcast isn't growing very fast. Um, why is this audience? Why are we only billing 10,000 downloads per episode? How can we squeak some more out of that? Is that where are we? What's going on here? So there's huge pressure from the suits to see those numbers of those shows continue to grow and get higher. So they're going to do everything they can to get every possible impression that they can bill, not only to keep the management happy, but also to keep the revenue growing.
yeah.
I know a group right now, today, that it's the first group I've seen in a while. They're pulling out of the space. They're killing 23 or 24 shows not because they're killing them because the growth, and they've had fabulous growth. The growth hasn't been fast enough to satisfy management, but most podcasters would be ecstatic to have had these type of growth numbers that these shows, these 23 or 24 shows have had over the past couple of years. But management
Uh-huh.
is not happy enough with the growth rate, and they say, okay, that's it, we're done. The experiment's over. And they treated it as an experiment instead of a long term investment. And I thought, man, the short sightedness of this um, was amazing. So,
Yeah.
I understand that the pressure from up on top to see shows perform. That's where we're the radio station management. We're the GMs.
Yeah.
We make the decision whether our show continues or not some suit.
Yeah. Who isn't in the medium at all.
Right.
Right.
This suit says, oh, we've this 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 is it. We're done. You know.
But that's how it's often been done in the traditional media, radio. Now, granted, a lot of radio executives, whatever, have had a history of being behind the mic and doing that, but it's different. I think being behind the mic in radio is a different situation than being a podcaster. I think it's quite different.
Yeah, Bill in the Facebook chat room. Our YouTube live is underneath my Geek News Central main YouTube channel. But hang out here with on Facebook with us. This is where the cool kids are. Um, so I just I don't know. I've had a certain level of frustration this week too. So it runs in man, it's obvious that sometimes we're maybe talking to some of the same people and you're hearing the same story. Um, and maybe we're not talking to the same people, but themes run together, it seems.
Well, the issues seem to be emanating from a certain section of the podcast community.
Oh, absolutely. That East
Yeah,
Coast bubble.
and it's not all East Coast, but it's just this approach to the space that's different than the culture of the medium and how it
Mm-hmm.
was built, and it runs contrary to what built this medium. Um, it just feels like those that are trying to take advantage of something. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's okay, take advantage? Does it mean they're looking to make quick success and, make their mark? I wish them luck.
yeah, yeah,
We want
uh,
more entrants for sure. They're going to figure it out.
oh yeah, just like everybody else has. They'll figure it out in the end. But you know, we'll see. But there's been some other things been going on in the space.
Oh,
Just things. It seems like we're coming into a time when there's also an explosion of podcasting events.
yeah, that's true.
That's starting to happen right now. Um,
What's the YouTuber that's doing who- it's Hank Green's crowdfunding something called PodCon? A,
yeah, it's actually up in Seattle,
a
of all
VidCon.
places.
They're calling it a VidCon for the podcasting industry. So I'm just kind of like, okay.
Well, he's a
Um,
co-creator of VidCon, which is the YouTube event down in LA.
mm-hmm.
So I guess he's seeing an opportunity to do something with podcasting. He's gotten a couple of big name podcasts lined up for this, but he's doing a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah,
Um,
Indiegogo.
yeah, and it's like December, was it 9th, 8th and 9th or something like that? Uh, 9th and 10th.
So it looks like it's going to be not a conference, but another one of these live event things.
Yeah, I, I haven't talked to Hank, but I would like to
Mm-hmm.
just hear what he's up to since it's happening in my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
and
trying to
I'll
load the
probably,
Indiegogo page, and it's just like, wow, it's loading slow. Maybe it's
well,
my connection here.
I didn't, okay, here it is. So yeah, it was really slow. It looks like they've raised almost $45,000.
Wow. Well, when you're a YouTube star, you can do that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
He must have something on his page that is. It basically told my browser. My browser was complaining about it. All this flash that people have on their pages. This is too many ads, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So it'll be interesting what's going on that. I'm definitely gonna reach out to him and see what's going on with this event. And let's see what else was going on. We talked about. Did we mention about the Scripps mid roll event is back in New York? The the Now Hear This, is that right?
No, I haven't even
Or
paid attention.
here
I haven't even paid attention to that.
it's um, Now Hear This podcasting festival. Yeah, that was down in the Anaheim area last year.
Oh, so
I guess it's going to be September 8th through the 10th on the East Coast up at the Jacob Javis Conference Center in New York. And I guess, it's all of those mid roll uh, produced programs
another
are going to be
thing.
there.
Oh yeah, Big National Podcast Festival moves to New York. I see
Yep.
this. So ktts.com is per. What is going on with the? So it's interesting that well they've got a big enough lineup of shows that they can do their own thing.
Well, yeah.
And
And it looks like they're working with the Wondery folks, and they're also working with Star Talk with Neil deGrasse Tyson, since he's there, and it looks like they're going to charge $110 for general admission to go in and see some of these podcasts. So
Comedy Bang Bang, How Did This Get Made, Love It or Leave It, Criminal, Political Reactive, The Nod, The Crack Podcast, Who Charted, Found, Pitch. I don't listen to any of these stories, any of these podcasts. Star Talk, All Stars. So September 8th through 10th at Javits. So, well, good for them.
and then the LA Podfest is also happening, and they're adding a Podcast Pro portion to that event as well. So they're going to have a little, actually, a big portion of the event is going to be a conference. It's
Yeah,
going
they
on.
they talk to us, but oh man,
It's expensive to get involved
oh,
in that. Yeah,
expensive isn't even the word. I was just like,
yeah,
it was crazy their sponsorship rates.
yeah.
I mean,
No,
like
yeah,
wow.
yeah. I talked to them too. I did a call with them. They were wanting to work with me around some sort of panel or something like that down there. And I know Rob Walsh is going to be down there. I mean, he goes to that event every
Yeah.
year. I've been on a panel down there. I was on a panel down there like 3 years ago. At that end, that was back when I was working for Podcast One, so I was down there. So
And
um,
they do a good job. No, don't get me wrong.
yeah,
It's a great event. It's mostly comedy podcasters though, right?
correct, correct. But
So,
they're this podcast pros thing is they're trying to take what they were doing kind of at a small scale.
mhm.
They had some panels and kind of sessions to help teach people how to podcast
Yep.
going on there, but they were in like tiny rooms off to the side of the hotel. um, there, Maybe the rooms would hold like 25 people or something
Hey,
like that.
Norm's going to be there.
Yeah, he's going to be a speaker at it. Yeah.
Allison Marino, podcast monetization specialist. Who's she? I don't even know who she is. Allison
uh
Marino. Does she works at Midroll or where does she work?
Not sure.
Yeah,
Actually, that's a good question.
podcast monetization specialist.
Yeah, I tried to get Norm involved in the LA Podfest like 3 or 4 years ago, and he just didn't have any interest.
Let me look her up. Allison
And I
Marino
think it
on
had to do with the
LinkedIn.
fact that Midroll was involved back then.
Yeah. She says she's a podcast monetization specialist,
Allison
but
Marino.
I've never oh, she works at Acast.
Oh, Acast. That's right. Okay.
Okay.
So she's the replacement for Sarah. That's what it sounds like.
Oh, okay.
Sarah Sarah Van Mosel.
Yep.
So I think she took over for her.
I haven't heard too
Um,
much from Acast. They've been pretty quiet as of late.
I think that's one of the reasons why Sarah probably left. They were a little too quiet for Sarah. Sarah likes to work in big stuff. Let's see what else is going on.
So, Chris Corinne says regarding Discovery, I've always been annoyed with search results within apps being completely terrible. I've typed in the exact name of shows and the show didn't appear in the search results.
Yeah, well, that's a completely different issue, right?
Yeah.
That's just poor search coding, and it's it's a complex process to build a good search engine of a SQL database. It's not as easy as it seems.
Well, it's not
Um,
that hard either. Yeah, I think if
yeah,
you
but
go,
but a lot of developers don't write all of the algorithms that you have to write, and they just doesn't always work that great. But that's not a basis to build a podcasting company on.
if you go over to our site at blueberry.com and go to the search in our directory, I think our directory search is pretty awesome. You'll
Is
find
it?
pretty much
Okay.
anything you want, but it's web based. But we don't,
Yep.
we've never seen the need to build an app.
Yeah.
So
And I see that the Podbean folks announced that they've got a podcast player skill that
yeah,
they've built for the Amazon Alexa.
yeah, their Chinese
Um,
programmers have been busy.
yes, yes.
Oh.
So it wasn't really clear. Did you get the impression now, was this where they were basically building a skill for each show, or were they building kind of like
I haven't even tried it yet, so I just saw the
I
news
think
this morning.
it's it reads like they built the like a client app for all Podbean podcasts.
It's probably like they're probably got to add the skill, and then that's how Amazon's doing it right now. So you have to build the skills. You got to load the app.
Yeah, but there's two ways of doing it. You can build a skill that is that basically will be like a catalog of content, or you can build a skill that's specific to a show.
It says search for Podbean, Alexa, enable the skill Podbean podcast
And then
player.
you search for a
Right.
particular show, right?
Yeah.
So
Then
they've built like a catalog based skill is what they've built.
yeah. So they
And
can select top podcasts by title, and
yeah,
so yeah, and you can play the podcast you followed. So okay.
but I think that there's still some navigational voice navigational issues with the Alexa that are going to hold it back for a while until they solve that. I mean, it's just like this example here. You have to say, Alexa, ask Podbean to play this podcast. So you're basically having
Yeah.
to give it three instructions to get to where you want, instead of saying, I want to listen to the new media show.
So all you
Uh,
have to do, and I'm not going to say this out loud because we'll trigger your guys' Alexa. So you say, Alexa, play the latest episode, and then you add the show name, and it'll play this show.
yeah.
That's all you have to say, and it'll, that you don't have to go through any additional minutia to, and most of your shows will play on Alexa just by doing that. Alexa, play the latest edition of, and then you say the show name. And the
Yeah.
same thing with Google Home. What you do with Google Home is you say, let me find I have it written down because I say this on every show. You tell your Google Home device, you say, okay, then, that word Google, you say, okay, and then you say, play the podcast, and then the name of the show. So I'm trying not to trigger your devices.
It's kind of hard not to, but yeah.
Yes, right. Well,
Um,
if you, the problem is I've learned the hard way. People were listening on Alexa, and I made their show restart.
oh no.
Put them in a loop. So you got to be very
Yeah.
careful not to trigger the device because you'll put people in a loop. They'll never get past you telling them how to listen on Alexa or your Google Home device.
Oh, that's a bug in Alexa they need to fix. Yeah.
Well, it's not
Um,
yeah.
well, it is in a way. Yeah. I mean, there should be a way that they can detect that and keep it from happening. Um, but it looks like that they're also saying in here that you can play from your sequential followed list
Yeah, so if you have
in
a follow
Podbean.
list that basically
Yeah.
lets you play your playlist.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
I
That's
sent
great.
that link over to Angelo because I was like, because he's been talking about it. And I was kind of like, poking him a little bit. I'm like,
So
yeah.
come on, come on, come
And,
on.
and in all honesty, you just got to sit down and do it. It's not that difficult to write these, but you have to put the, kind of the hooks in a little bit. It's just a matter of finding the time to code it up.
Yeah.
So I think everyone
Yeah.
will probably have it at some point here in the near future.
Yeah. I would agree.
So just to toot my own horn here, we announced our next level of
That's right.
PowerPress sites this week. So the team finally, thank you, finished it up, and so our next level of PowerPress sites has been announced, and I'm really excited about that because in the very near future we're going to let our affiliates actually have their own defined list of plugins that will be in the second level of the service. So they'll actually be able to have a kind of a semi-branded solution. It's basically kind of their best of type of configuration for a WordPress site. So,
Okay.
and what we've really done there is, we obviously last year we introduced the free version that has a very limited. It's a really locked down version of WordPress to be able to give away free. You can't let people run amok too much. And then the second level is kind of like lets people grow, and then the third level, which we'll announce very very shortly, is basically you have full control. But the main thing is it's fully managed, backed up. We update it. We do all the stuff that people don't have to worry about security, and we handle all that stuff. They just got to create content, and it's a performance kind of like a WP engine type of system with that type of level um, of service. So we're pretty excited about finally being able to bring that to the market and place, and as I like to say, start paying for the code time we've invested in this thing.
Yeah, I would think that that's been a pretty big project for you.
It has.
So, yeah,
It's taken a lot longer than we thought too. A lot longer. And
yeah, they things like that always do, don't they?
yeah, and so anyway, and what really is the challenge is the being able to, my whole selling point in this thing is it's got to fly like an eagle. It's got to scream. And so they spent a lot of time on the performance side, and that was really my big thing. I said, I don't care if you come in as a free user or if you're an enterprise user. I want the sites to be like smoking fast. And
Yeah.
that was too much to the chagrin of the development team because that was kind of a hard and fast. Because Google now is really looking at a lot of signals, and if your page doesn't load quick, you don't get ranked as high. So
Yeah. Performance is important when it comes to search results
yeah,
these days.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hey, I also saw an article that was put out by the Mr. MG Sigler, who's been a long time kind of technology writer, and he's worked for Google Ventures and whatever. He put out an article talking about iTunes. I don't know if you saw this or not. It's on the Pod to Pod link.
oh,
It's
is it the one that says a time to kill
to
iTunes?
kill iTunes. Yeah,
Yeah, another
yeah.
one, another iTunes hater.
Well, it isn't so much that. I mean, he's not really off. I mean, I normally really enjoy his articles because
Mm-hmm.
he's looking at it. He's not bashing Apple. He's more talking about the iTunes application on Windows, um, and how uh, I believe it was last week they announced. I don't know if it was Google or Microsoft announced that iTunes, a new version of iTunes, was coming to the new Windows Store for the new Windows 10s OS that's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this may signal is that that iTunes software, the kind of that bloated iTunes software that's been out in the market really since what 2006 will get updated. So I don't know what this means. He's recommending that Apple pursue a strategy of kind of breaking up the what we're talking about is for just for Windows, and it could actually apply to Mac OS as well. I know that there's a lot of, and Todd, you're a Mac user. I'm not really a Mac user, but I certainly know a lot of people that are. But there's a lot of people that are kind of fed up with the iTunes software client for Mac and Windows, and it's needed kind of a update, right? And I don't necessarily disagree, but I do I do kind of hesitate a little bit when they start talking about, well, each of these sections that are in the iTunes software today need to be broken up into their own separate app.
Oh,
I'm
I don't
just
think so.
I'm just not a huge fan of this concept of taking every little function and breaking up into a separate app. I think it's a direction that I think takes us off in the wrong direction. But I do like the idea that he has just in general of updating that software and kind of making it more modern because it does feel a little bit mid 2000s still. I don't know what you think, but it's a
Well,
little old school.
I think what you've got is you've got a company that has a successful formula and is making billions of dollars, and
That's
they're
correct.
they're not going to kill iTunes, but
No,
everyone,
no, I'm not saying that they're going to kill it. What they need to do is kind of update it
well,
and build
they
a
don't
better piece of
care.
software.
It's being done here.
I know, but there's still millions of people using Windows and Mac computers. I mean, but there is talk, right, that Apple might walk away from the Mac. I don't know. I mean, is that
No
based in
way.
truth?
No way. Apple's going to walk away from what? The Mac?
M- Making laptops.
No.
Really?
No way.
Okay.
I would fall out of my chair.
Well, you have to admit that they really pushed it to the back burner over the last couple of years, though.
You know, I wouldn't say they pushed it to the back burner. I would say that the updates haven't happened as fast as some folks want, and they have listened to that, especially on the Pro side.
Yeah.
I think those folks that don't need the Mac Pro um, probably have no issue, but those Pro users are the ones that are feeling a little neglected, and Apple recognizes that they have pissed that group off. So, they had some meetings earlier this year. They're promising uh, a new Mac Pro, a new MacBook. They're going to come out with a new MacBook Pro here shortly that they're saying has the updated processor in it. Of course, it would happen after I buy a new Mac Pro. So you never can catch up, but it is what it is. But they're not walking away from the hardware at all.
Well, no, I'm not necessarily saying that they're walking away necessarily from the hardware. I'm just talking about the whole Mac, the whole Mac OS type platform. I mean, eventually, do you think that Apple's going to just shift everything over to iOS?
I would I don't know. I doubt it. But what do I know? I'm not the
Yeah,
Steve Jobs successor. And I use both. I use Windows and I spend most of my time, believe it or not, on a Windows machine. I
yeah,
use Mac, but I primarily do video editing on Mac, and I
yeah.
travel out. It depends on my mood. Sometimes I travel with my Mac. Sometimes I travel with my PC. This trip to Japan I'm going to go on. I'm going to travel with my Mac because I'm going to take my DSLR and I'm going to shoot some video, and I want to edit it when I'm on the road, and put some stuff up on my personal YouTube page. So
Yeah, and
we'll
I'm
see.
actually planning on going to Europe for another speaker retreat next month, and I'm a little concerned that I I may not be able to bring my.
Oh, they've already said they've already put that on the table. That's already been. They said they're not going to invoke anything. That meeting happened last week. You don't have to worry. You'll be able to travel with your laptop.
Well, actually, I've got a Surface computer that I would take with me. So
Yeah,
because what they were talking about doing was banning travel from Europe to the USA.
yeah. They've already said they're not going to do that. They've
Oh,
shelved that. That was decided earlier in the week.
oh, it was okay,
Yeah, so you don't have to worry. You'll be able to have your laptop in the airplane instead
okay.
of your checked luggage.
Yeah, I wasn't really looking forward to putting my Surface tablet in luggage and have it be thrown around.
A lot of
Yeah.
airlines are taking what they're doing in the Middle East during the ban is they are providing computers for their clients in the airplane, and then they're separately checking them. So it's kind of like you curbside check, and you get your as soon as you get off the airplane, you get your laptop back. They're not making people put them in their bags,
Oh,
which is
okay.
which is smart of the airlines. But anyway, I don't think you have
Yeah.
to worry about that going to Europe.
So I'm not sure that the laptop would be in very good shape by the time it got there.
No, not the way they throw bags around, would it?
I'd have to, I think I'd have to wrap it in bubble wrap
Well,
or
what it
something
really
to
was,
carry.
it was
Yeah.
just a plot for them to be able to take laptops while they were in flight and copy the contents. That's what it was.
Oh, is that what it
Yeah, there
was?
was some guy downstairs,
He
some
was
three,
scanning it all,
yeah,
right?
some
Yeah.
three-letter agency that was copying the laptops. That's what
Oh
was really
boy.
happening.
Oh boy.
But anyway, I don't know. I think people can speculate a lot about what Apple does. Apple does what they want to do, and they're going to do whatever is best for Apple's bottom line. And
Oh
you
yeah.
know, that's all that counts. But there is a lot of, it just amazes me how many people hate hate Apple right now. I mean, I get on phone. Well, if Apple did this and Apple did that, I'm like, well, I'm sorry, they're not. And
Yeah.
and if they do, then
Only we. We had better data out of
Oh
Apple. Yeah.
my God, and here's the funny thing, in the scheme of things, we have the absolute best data of anyone. That's what makes me laugh. We have better data than
And radio.
radio and television, and but we're held to this such extreme standard. It's oh, cracks me
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. That's true. We have real data, not survey data, which is always seems to get us in trouble in the podcasting spaces when you start contrasting. I mean, I think we saw that play out pretty clearly at the NAB, which was the contrast between survey data and real data, right? And how
Right.
that can be perceived quite differently, and how people are so quick to believe survey data over
Oh,
real data.
if you want to, here's the thing: if you're a big company, and let's say you're a mid-roll, or you're a Gimlet or a Panoply, you know, if you look at you don't see them quoting those companies. You don't see them quoting too much of this survey data that comes out because they know what's going on with their content. They know how it's being consumed. And if they're not running their own internal surveys themselves, then that's ridiculous. They should be coming up with their own data, getting their own ground truth of what's really happening in the space with their content. And they
Hmm.
they might stop relying on some of this, telephone survey data. And I know,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that telephone survey data. It gives us big, wide trends. But I'm also going to collect my own data, and I'm going to see where the ground truth is on our clients. And when I have hard data, when I got over 100 million, over 100, well, 150, 160 million downloads to look at every month, I know how media is being consumed.
Yeah. That's true.
So,
That's true. You know, it, the data is out there. No question about it.
right.
The real data.
Yeah.
So I see that Mark Ramsey is doing his Audio Feature Fest again in June 2nd.
Yeah. Mark has taken a lot of heat from the podcasting space. So, what do you think this
Yeah.
event's going to be? What are they going to, what are they doing?
Well, he's been moving more and more towards, talking about on demand and podcasting. So I'm not surprised that that's the direction that he's going. But he takes kind of a radio perspective on it, and that sometimes takes him down the rabbit hole of some misinformation. So
Well, anything I look at it this way too, and some of that data is if we can get the more radio people we get in, it's good for my business.
yeah,
you know.
yeah. No, I mean I think radio has a place in this business, but I think that they have to reset how they look at their audio world a little bit. It's not everything that they do shouldn't be thought of as radio.
Yeah.
you know,
Old habits die hard.
yeah,
So, and as
yeah.
we,
I mean, I guess you could say that about us. We
well,
think of
true.
everything as podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Um, but we do kind of spend time at radio events, and I know I've worked really hard to reach over to that world and be involved.
But
Um,
just like the event out of LA, though, nary a social media peep about podcasting out of the event out of LA last week.
yeah,
Not a nary a thing. And I know
yeah.
they had some podcast sessions, so it makes you go, hmm.
I think that they're pulling. I mean, some of the industry is kind of pulling back from it, or they think that they already know what the solution is, and that may be to do very little.
Well, the chickens are going to come home to roost here very quickly with, iHeartRadio having a upcoming $1 billion balloon payment due.
Yeah,
Um, I think that there is going to be shock waves throughout the entire system. I think radio's in real trouble. I think they're all holding their breath, figuring out what's going to happen. There's a couple of other streaming, well, at least one other streaming company that's bleeding red too. That if and when that happens, you talk about Pandora. Pandora's being talked about now in talks with Sirius XM being acquired. So if SiriusXM is looking to acquire Pandora, SiriusXM must think, the handwriting's on the wall. I need a digital streaming service.
Yeah.
So, are they
And they
hedging?
probably do.
They
And they,
do.
yeah.
A lot
And
cheaper to support an online system than putting, half a $500 million satellites in orbit.
yeah, that's true. And they've been those guys have been playing around in the podcasting space off and on for many years. I don't know that most realize that, but the XM satellite radio network used to have a network of podcasts that they put out.
Well,
And they
they've got their new online site now too, where they're accepting podcast submissions too. So they
No, I know, but for many years, and this was quite a few years ago, they had a network of podcasts that they were they were
right,
actively
right, right,
publishing into
right,
the platform
right.
or into the ecosystem as free podcasts, and they basically pulled out on that.
Yeah, they were
Um,
taking a lot of Mevo content, or not Mevo, Mevio pod show content and piping it in. Yeah, there was a lot of
yeah,
those Mevio shows that were over there.
yeah, and then they pulled out back when a lot of the bigger media companies pulled out of the podcasting space. This is like I think back in 2008, 2009, 10 timeframe when
Yep.
people when the bubble popped in perception,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people pulled out. I was pretty active in the community at that space that was during that time frame and saw it happen. I know you did too, Todd.
Yep.
And it's just funny sometimes. I see the companies jumping back into the podcasting space that were very vocal about how bad the space was back in 2009, and I just think it's like it's good to see them back, but it's also I felt a little bit kind of um, shamed a little bit by these companies and their what they said about the podcasting space back then too.
So, Rob, I do want to talk just about share a personal experience that happened to me yesterday.
Yeah,
Lucky I'm here right now.
really.
Yeah, I was. There's this highway we have here in Hawaii called H3, and a large part of it is raised. It basically gets you from the windward to the leeward side of the island. And I was basically heading to Kaneohe. I was going across to the other side of the island and was in the process of passing a vehicle. And I was probably 65, 70 at the point. And I was coming around a curve. And thank God I wasn't looking at my cell phone or anything else because I car was coming at me in my lane of traffic.
Oh no.
Going the wrong way on the highway. And this is one of these highways that has, like, once you get on it, you can't get off for like 11 miles because there's no exit. So I have no idea how this guy got turned around in the first place. But it was
So you were on a single lane
no,
ramp or something?
I was on a highway, 2-lane highway, and
Okay.
he was in my lane coming at me.
Oh no.
And the closure rate was pretty fast. And all I can say is thank God for anti-lock brakes. And the car I was passing, he kind of started to move a little bit to the right. I braked absolutely as hard as I could, and then jerked to the right. And I, not kid you not, it was close. Or
Really?
it would have been a head on. I looked in my rear mirror and two or three cars behind me. I don't know how they got out of his way, but I have never been on a highway before where I have been someone going the wrong way. And it after I pulled the pulled my pants out of my splinter, I was like, that just didn't happen. And I dialed 911 and reported the car going the wrong way on the highway. But
Wow.
it was really, it's the closest I have come to. I mean, I've never been in a head-on situation before. I've gotten T-boned. I've had people run into me in the rear. I've
Yeah.
accidentally rear-ended someone, but this would have been I would not be here in this shape right now because we were looking at a airbag slash the hope your car can protect you moment. It was
Yeah.
close. I mean, it was really close. So
So
uh,
it, so did this car just continue driving at
yeah,
freeway speed and
yeah.
didn't even see you or something?
And it happened so fast. I don't even remember who was. I think there was. I think there was two people in the front of the car. But the crazy thing is the median on this road on the if they I was in the left lane and the median on this road is wide enough to support a parked car. Why the vehicle was in my lane and hadn't switched over and got into the median is beyond me. Now this was in the morning. So it
Hmm.
wasn't like this guy was hammered unless he'd been drinking all night. And I still for like the only thing I can think of is they got up the hill, got confused, decided they needed to go back to town, didn't want to continue the 5 more miles to the exit to turn around to come back, and decided, well, we'll just backtrack. I I'm never. This is not a highway that it's easy to. Number one, it's not easy. I don't know where they would have turned around. But the only place it would have been for me to go would have been up and over a 4 foot median and probably 150 drop down to the surface because I was on a raised part of the platform and I'm happy to be
Interesting.
here.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, thank
That's
God
weird.
for anti-lock brakes. That's all I can say. And I'm getting new tires tomorrow, so my tires are on the, not on the upper side of good grip. So
Yeah.
oh my God, it was bad. It was really. I'm just thankful.
So you were able to come to a complete stop before
Well,
he
no, no,
he
no. I
reached you?
I mean, I was on. I had the brake pedal in the firewall, and you can feel the brakes
Yeah.
gripping, and
Yeah.
I'm not skidding. And as soon as the car in front of me that I was passing got it far enough ahead, I ducked in behind him, and the car, shoom, and I mean, just like I had no more than turned the wheel to get in the right hand lane, and the car that was in my lane continued on. So it was because I was coming around a curve, and when you're at 70 and the other car's at speed, that closure rate is like, it's fast.
Oh yeah.
It's really fast. And if I had been looking down, if I'd have been any way distracted, I mean whatsoever, it'd have been a head on. It'd have been done. I'd have been like,
Wow.
what the hell just happened?
Wow.
So thank goodness, because I do a lot of telephone calls in the car. I'm on hands free, but it's you just if I'd have been it's even a microsecond of slight distracted, it would have ended differently. So
Wow. All right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're on the
Trauma.
highways, watch out for those wrong way drivers. I can laugh now, but holy cow.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah,
Life's dramas.
oh, I just, it was bizarre. I know that, and I don't understand why people must just lose their, either it was an old person or tourist or I don't know. I really don't know what the story was. But when I called 911, the police dispatcher was like, "How are they going the wrong way on that road?" And I'm like, I don't know either. They
Yeah.
they really had to work at it to do that wrong because even the on ramps and off ramps are like these extended deals where it's just it's not conducive to going the wrong way. It just isn't. They had to have a hang on a Yui.
Maybe they were intoxicated somehow. That
It's
was the
7 o'clock or eight
explanation.
o'clock in the morning.
Well, that doesn't limit some people.
Well, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
This road is one of those roads where if you get on it and you're low on gas, you're going to run out because there's no place to get off.
Oh,
But
jeez.
yeah, and I've done that a few times where I've been like going down the hill praying, like, oh my God, I'm going to run out of gas because I forgot to got gas before I got on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but sorry, I had to just share that with you. It was just one of those, crazy life story moments.
Yeah. Sounds like it. So, anything else happening that you've heard about here lately in
It
the
just,
podcast
I
space?
just been a lot of what's been the theme of the last couple of weeks is lawyers. And I don't know why. A lot of lawyer firms wanting to do podcasts. I don't know if the lawyers went to some sort of a conference and they were told this is what you need to do as a law firm. But I probably talked to 5 law firms in the past 2 weeks. So that whoever was at the conference and told them podcasting is the way to go, thank you. It's a
Yeah,
break.
I mean that's really interesting that you raise that point because I've seen I've done calls with some associations and some people that are kind of trying to market to a particular industry because they get feedback from people. I mean, I was a guest on a couple of podcasts here recently of shows like around design
Hmm.
and getting feedback from a lot of their listeners to their podcasts, wanting to start, a podcast about, interior design or art or whatever. And I'm seeing kind of like some of these leading podcasts in the specific genres, um, wanting to have a person on to talk about best practices in podcasting because they keep hearing from their audience that, I want to start a podcast. I want to start a podcast and I don't know how to do it. And can you share how to do it, and they they've reached out to me, some of them have reached out to me to come onto their show to have that discussion, right? So
Right.
that host can share their experience, but I can kind of give some industry context to that discussion. And so I'm being a guest on some podcasts I wouldn't normally be a guest on. Like I was a guest on a fashion podcast the other day, um, and a design podcast, so these are starting to happen, which I think is it's a good sign. I think that that these genres that have kind of maybe been a little underserved, are starting to wake up to being able to maybe use this medium to grow their particular industry, from some of the thought leaders from those folks.
I did have a call with the NAB rep,
I did too.
and I'm really excited because they're talking about potentially putting the podcast pavilion in an absolutely fantastic location. Now, did he talk about the 2 locations to you that they're considering?
Yeah, they're looking at potentially putting it with the audio section on the central hall, right?
Well, I think he had talked about, yeah, in the central hall.
Yeah,
I think that would be, man, if we could get up front there, Rob, that would be
yeah,
like huge.
yeah. But
That
it does sound like they're all in, and
Yeah,
they've created a committee of sorts, which is currently comprised of you, me, and Rob Walsh and Rob McCracken,
yeah.
that can help guide them down this path of creating a much bigger presence for podcasting at the NAB show.
Hmm.
They're looking at potentially doing it at the NAB show back in New York,
Right.
which
And
is coming up here, what, in October, November, or something like
yeah,
that.
and I basically said the only way that we would probably be interested in going to New York, at least for my company, would be is if it would be media buyer focused.
Yeah,
I just don't the cost to do 2 shows is huge, but I don't know. We'll see what they come up with for New York because it's a relatively small show, the one in New York.
yeah. But they are open to
Yeah.
ideas on how to bring the industry to that event. I mean,
Yep.
our our representative that we're talking to that's doing this, uh, he wasn't even aware of the new media show's
Right.
involvement in NAB, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I told him that we had already been exhibitors at the NAB, just like 3 years ago,
Yep.
and and had experience doing that,
And I
and having a designated area for podcasting.
And I talked also about being because we've exhibited NAB before without any podcast relationship. And some of the
Yeah,
challenges that we had, and being stuck in the nosebleed area. And I said it's for me anyway. If you can put the pavilion in an area that I know there's going to, because I know the traffic trends at these events. If I'm in the nosebleed area, I will not sign a contract until I know where the pavilion is going to be, where it's physically going to be.
Yeah.
And if I'm like stuck in no man's land, it's not even worth going. So
Yeah.
location, 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 and usually the only way you get to a good location is be at the show 10 years and move up into those spots. But if they have a place to drop us, um, as a pavilion, I'm all in to go. If especially if it's going to be a pavilion with pods. I don't know how many of us want 10 by 10 booths, but I think pods are a better mix for that event.
Yeah. Well, and they're trying to decide if they're going to have a like a panel or content
Yeah.
at that event. Um, I guess he had worked with Lori, at, with the advanced ad
Mm-hmm.
pavilion, so he was familiar with that. I told him that you and I and Rob had done a panel in that particular pavilion,
Yep.
and and he was aware of that, and that if we were able to do something like that too, have a little content area in there, and if that would be a good thing potentially as well. But I didn't want them to go down this path of saying, well, we're going to do all the podcast stuff down there on the floor, but
Right.
we're not going to do it up with the radio track. So I was hoping that they would make sure that they did a parallel track on that, um, have it down on the show floor as well as up with the radio professionals.
Yeah, I didn't talk about that specific part of it. So, what
Yeah,
was there any response from him on that, or?
yeah. I think he was, he's talking to Josh about this stuff, and I think Josh's tendency is wanting to develop that content area up in the radio track, like a parallel to the radio track
Right.
kind of concept. I think he wants to keep that going. What they're trying to decide is whether or not they're going to have any show floor content at all,
Oh,
and is it worth it for them to pursue that? And I told him certainly, we're more than happy to participate in the advanced advertising um, pavilion on the floor if they choose not to have a content area. If you
yeah.
just want to put that all over there, that might make some sense since we've kind of already established that as a place that is important for broadcasters to talk about monetization.
But I think it would be good if we had an area where we could, if there was a, podcast pavilion type of thing. I
Yeah,
think it would be good to have a small stage there where we could have some stuff.
yeah,
But I don't know, you
yeah.
know, I
It depends on how much space they want to devote to this and how many
right,
exhibitors, you
right.
know, that they could have. I think, like the Shure and the Sennheisers and the Audio Technica folks would want to be around that, right?
Well,
Somehow.
but they've already have their booths in that area, so
That's
they're
right.
they're not going to want to have a mini booth there. So,
No,
how
that's true. So how do we incorporate this podcast area up, in that same area with those other shows or
well,
those other companies?
I think you have to have a um, if you're dropped in the middle of that, I think you're going to be fine because
Yeah,
depending on how many vendors come. This is a much more expensive show to do than, let's say, Podcast Movement.
yeah,
Just the overall fees are going to be higher. So I don't think you'll get a lot of the guys that are doing like little startups. They're going to come there because of
the
the
expense.
expense
Yeah,
to bring stuff in. So what can we count on? Can we count on all the podcast vendors there? Will Midroll participate? Will Acast participate? Will Podbean and Buzzsprout and all those other groups come? I don't know if they will or not. Um,
yeah.
it's That's the question because it's a
Hmm.
different audience. You're not. Here's the thing: you're
It
not
is.
you're not going there to talk to podcasters. You're going there to talk to corporate America. And if you don't have a corporate leaning product, you might as well not even go. If you
Yeah.
don't have something you can offer corporate America,
Though Todd, I think that's an interesting question, and I think it's one that I did talk to him about. Was the whole thing of, can that show attract regular podcasters to
Ah,
even attend? And I
man.
think that I mean, if you think about what the new media show did, let's back up and look at the 30,000-foot view here. The new media show incorporated themselves into that event and were able to attract regular podcasters.
Right.
Um,
But they had
so
a whole, they had a full track, and it wasn't just
that's right.
podcasting either. It was blogging, and even though it wasn't executed great,
Yeah.
it was a show within a show.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I guess if it's positioned correctly, maybe it could be an attractive place for podcasters to attend, and not just corporate America.
Well, here's the
So
problem. Podcast movement is the show right
yeah,
now for
that's right.
podcasting.
That's
Most
true.
podcasters can't afford to go to two shows. If I was going to tell any podcaster what show to go to, I'm going to tell them to go to Podcast Movement.
Sure.
That's the show they need to go to as a podcaster. It's
Yeah.
designed from the ground up for independents. Now they're doing a radio segment as well, but that's fine. They're going to come and join the party. But
Yeah.
NAB, um, it's a whole different animal. So independent podcasters that want to, the show at NAB is, first of all, most of the podcasters don't have any idea how big this show is. It's massive. So let's say a podcaster comes to this event, and unless there's a bunch of sessions that make sense for them to come, they're going to come talk to each one of us and spend a couple of hours in the pavilion, and then they're going to go talk to Shure, and they're going to go around and Mackie and all the other audio vendors, and that's going to be half a day. And then they're going to be like wandering around, their minds blown by all the TV and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it for most of them, their wallets can't handle the cost of the stuff that's at this show.
Yeah. Agreed.
So it's a whole different, event. So they have to have, in order to attract podcasters, they're going to have some meaningful
Yeah.
sessions and meaningful speakers that make it worth coming. But don't think they're going to be able to attract the, you know, I,
Well,
I I'm not
I mean,
going
I
to
think
see
it gets back to
podcasters.
Todd. Yeah, no, I see your point. I think it gets back to the question of what does the future look like for the NAB? Does the future focus on traditional media, or does that event focus on new media, and how these traditional media companies are becoming new media companies? And maybe that means that they start building content around trying to attract new media creators, um, and trying to look to be more inclusive, instead of making an event that only focuses on, ABC, NBC, CBS, all of these big networks. Because you see live stream there. I
Yeah,
mean, you
yeah.
see these platforms that are being developed to cater to independent creators.
And when
Um,
I walk into the live
yeah,
stream booth, who do I see? I see people that I know in the
yeah,
space.
yeah.
So
Kelly Lewis was there,
yeah, they're there.
or Luria was there.
Well, she
Yeah,
was actually, doing live, but they're
which is
there.
fine. Yeah,
And the live, and so for podcasters that are doing live, there's a lot to spend. And also another thing too is all the live companies are in that same area of Central
yeah,
Hall, and at least
yeah,
live stream and a few others.
yeah.
The new tech guys are in the top of Central in the back, but that's where they've always been. But
Yeah, and I would like to see more podcasters get involved in video. Um, and maybe over time that there's opportunities for podcasters on the broadcast radio side. Um, so I can see these worlds blending together more than they have, but it does still feel like there's this strata that exists with that event, where it's like, well, podcasters really don't get a benefit from going to this.
10 years ago
Um,
when I went, I couldn't afford anything.
yeah, but it's changing,
It's
right?
changing. Now I can go in there and there is some stuff that I want to incorporate here in the studio that are in my affordability range. And I stress that with, this is one of the things in the early days we went in there. I'm like, okay, you've got this great live streaming system. It's $45,000. I said, we need a system that costs a $5,000 system because, I'm just calculating how much it's going to cost for computer, cards, and et cetera. And we're well below that point now of being able to have a great live system. It's under $5,000 to do 3 cameras now and have a standalone system. So they've listened and they brought stuff to market. So it's still, though, way on the top price end of even some shows. A lot of guys are doing live on Facebook with just a webcam, which is fine. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, so there's stuff there, but the hotel pricing is really high during NAB.
Yeah.
It's a
Well, you
different
just
gig.
stay at the Circus, or you stay up in the off of Fremont Street,
I will
right, Todd?
not stay at Circus Circus. No. Yeah, and Fremont Street is a place to be if you want to save a little money, even though the prices there are starting to go up a little bit.
Are they?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Well, they're because people are overflowing into downtown now because the events have grown, especially CES.
Oh
CES is
yeah.
massive, and there's not enough
That's
hotels on the strip to hold them all.
that's turned into a monster show.
It's
No question
monster,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think from my perspective, NAB attendance it looked to me to be down. And to be quite frank with you, the traffic that was in North Hall, where where a lot of the radio people are, I have had reservations about being in North Hall. I just don't think the traffic is exciting up there in that audio section of Central. There's enough traffic there to, keep me excited. They stick us
Oh
over in
yeah.
North Hall somewhere. I've got concerns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't, I'd rather be around all the, audio vendors, not over where, the 50 by 50s are, where Everett's and all those, big radio studio companies are.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. So I guess I'm just trying to think of where does the future of this medium live, and I also noticed that there weren't a lot of public radio people at NAB either, because I guess it does lean towards more commercial radio. Um,
Well, a lot of them have. Just remember, a lot of you don't see the actual radio people. They've got their suites and they're doing their meetings, and you just
yeah,
see the vendors that support equipment to these companies. It's not like FM 100 has a booth. That doesn't exist there.
correct. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
But I didn't see many public radio people getting involved in any of the content sessions.
oh no, they
I didn't see public radio people there from an attendee perspective. Um, that section of the podcasting community wasn't there.
yeah.
Um, and it's kind of interesting to me, I guess. The NAB show still has its niche, right?
Oh yeah,
And it happens to be a big niche, but it's also built on traditional media,
yeah.
and it just feels like that they're starting to the opportunities opening up, right,
And
to them being open to more new media stuff
oh,
now.
I'm excited because well, they know where the future is. They see the
Yeah.
trends. It's they're talking a lot about it. So
Yep.
that's they're not foolish, and it may have been a little early for them before, but I guess we'll see where this goes. But I told the rep there. I said what I'm looking at is I'm going to meet corporate. I'm going to go. This is who I'm expecting to see at NAB. And
Yeah.
for me, success of that event is, signing 5 corporate clients. Going to podcast movement, my success rate is signing 100 podcasters to our service. There's different perspectives on where we go. And, and
Yeah.
also at podcast movement, what am I doing? I'm waving a flag. I'm still in business. We're still here. Let's talk. Let's catch up. Um,
Yeah.
it's different. It's a whole different show,
Yeah. Totally.
you
But
know.
and that podcast movement planning is in full swing. I know I'm pretty busy doing stuff with it too, trying to get ready.
Yeah, haven't seen the
Uh,
floor selections yet. Haven't got any of that information. So
yeah, yeah, I haven't seen it either.
I'm sure we'll see it at some point, but
Well, we're
it's
still a few months off. We're still a few
yeah, but
months off.
usually
Yeah.
we have our, and maybe they're still getting vendors, so they're having to, the floor size is adjusting. I don't know, but Dan, if you're listening, what's the skinny? Where are we at on that? When are we going to get to pick our booze? Um,
Yes.
I knew it's in process. So
So have you made all your reservations for down there?
yeah, I think we've got our hotels all set up and everything. I haven't set up any flights yet or anything, but
Yeah, I haven't done
I
that
think
yet
we've
either.
booked our rooms and all that. But yeah, it's going to be a busy summer. It blows me away. It's May 20th. I'm like, where the hell is this year going already?
Yeah.
You know,
No, it's
it's
almost half over.
it's crazy. It really really is. But
Yeah.
we're nearing the end here. We're at about an hour 30. Just to let everyone know, if you guys don't know, my wife is now working for Hawaiian Airlines. She's actually a customer service agent at ANA. She has worked her schedule. My son graduates from middle school on Thursday, and I guess that's a big thing now. You got to graduate from middle school before you go to high school. But my youngest son who is will be 14. He's asking and has been asking to go. There's a couple things he wants to see in Kyoto, Japan. He's wanted to ride on Shinkansen and a few other things. So because she can fly for free and she's got the crystal ball of being able to look and see what the seating looks like for Japan, she is basically, we're going to try this coming Friday to make a mad dash to Japan for just 2 or 3 days. I think I landed back here Wednesday morning at like 7 a.m. or something like that, Honolulu time. But you lose a day going, you gain a day coming back. But so Rob, I have to apologize. Maybe no show next Saturday.
Okay. That's all
So
right. We can give those that listen to this show or watch this show a week off to enjoy their spring
yeah. So that
on a Saturday morning.
that's my apologies here. Just that sometimes Dad's got to say, "Yep, let's." No, I'm signed off. We'll go and when you can fly for free, or actually you have to pay the tax, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it's a good deal. You can make last minute plans for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we may not get on. I might still be here. If I'll let you know Friday if you don't hear from me Friday, you'll know that I've escaped. But if we
Well, I'm
don't,
sure you'll post something to Facebook about it because
yeah,
that's how I keep up with what's going on with you anyway.
yeah. But that's at least the initial plan here. But anyway, I hope you guys have gotten a lot out of the show today. You can tell Rob and I are a little bit anxious about some of the stuff going on in the space. So keep your ears to the ground. If you hear something, if you're a corporate leader and you've listened to this part of the show and you got something to say or add to our conversation or want to, how should we say, um, contest, we'd,
Set us straight.
we'd love to hear from you. And I know that there's some of you that always send us little notes. You're more than welcome to come on the show and kind of share your perspective. I know that some of you are a little nervous to do so, just because you don't necessarily want to be on the public side of agreeing with us.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's not fair. Um,
Todd, we're so controversial. You have
well,
to.
but we try to be nice. So, but this East Coast bubble thing is getting a little ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what it is.
It is.
We still want to be friends with the East Coast bubble,
Yeah.
but it makes it hard though sometimes.
It's like I'm thinking, man, I go to New York on to do this trip I'm doing in June. I'm going to have to wear a bulletproof vest when I make the rounds.
It's going to be snipers in the buildings looking for that orange shirt. You're
or,
going to have
or,
like a
or,
big target on
or,
your
or
back.
maybe they could just absolutely give two shits. Maybe they don't care, you know?
That's probably more likely the case.
Yeah,
They just they just
you're
are.
from Hawaii. Yeah,
That's right. You independent podcaster, you.
yes, yes. You scum. Let me squash on you with my foot. You know.
You do your podcast in your bedroom, Todd. You're so bad.
Yes, I do, and I'm proud of it. A 10 by 12 bedroom where the sun is bright and making my face look like it has a spotlight on it. So,
Yes.
anyway, yeah, because I can't afford a studio. I live here in Hawaii. They sell property or rent property by the square inch here.
Yeah. Well, that's true. Space is a premium there because
Yeah. It's
you
not
live on a small island.
and we're not
Yes.
making any more dirt. That's well, they are on the Big Island, but that won't be habitable for another 500 years.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
yeah.
Still cooling.
Or you may end up building on it, and a lot of people have, and then end up with no house 2 or 3 years later when the lava flow changes and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
burns it down. Mother
Yeah,
Nature
that's
will
true.
not be stopped.
Yep.
So the key is leaving Hawaii. I keep pushing. So the goal is to try to make a move here by 2019. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but that is the end goal,
Oh,
or maybe
okay.
20. It depends on when my son graduates, but that's kind of the my hopefully my plan. I want to get back to the mainland where I can afford to retire when I'm 60, not to have to work until I'm 80 and die. So, all right,
Yeah. All right. Well,
hey,
Todd, thanks.
everyone,
Yeah.
thanks for being here. Everyone, take care. We'll see you. And again, send your comments to, of course, I'm Todd at blueberry.com. You can follow me at Geek News on Twitter. Rob,
You can follow me on Twitter, Rob at Rob Greenlee, and that's with two E's on the end. That's a great place. Or you can send me an email. You can send it to rob at Spreaker.com, where I'm the head of content over there. And I do a weekly show over there as well called the Spreaker Live Show. It's at SpreakerLiveShow.com. And I do that live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. Talk about podcasting. What else is there to talk about, right,
that's
Todd?
right. And you can join me on your podcast at powerpresspodcast.com as well every other week. So that's one of the 4 shows I'm doing right now. But if you haven't listened to Adam Curry interview on podcastlegends.com, do that. And we're going to start taking appointments for anyone that's been podcasting from at least 10 years. If you've been podcasting at least 10 years, we're going to start doing interviews shortly on that show again, too. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll see you maybe next week. If not, it'll be 2 weeks from now here on the New Media Show. Everyone, take care. We'll see you. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.